Hello and welcome back to Studio B, here for the next installment, let's call it. This is going to be the first of what I hope to be a few what I like to call Prep-isodes. This is going to be mainly covering the prepping of the material for a wire wrap horse. This is a commission, and so the material that I'm working with is POTS cable, or plain old telephone service cable. This has been outside for about 30 years, so this outside casing is very tough. But inside is this lovely copper. These beautiful solid strands of copper. And this is roughly, I want to say, anywhere between a 22 to a 20 gauge. So I have quite a bit of this, and I hope to turn it into, stripped copper wire, and then I can show you the process of using a braiding block to turn it into copper rope, 3-strand, copper rope 9-strand, flattened braids, and expanded 3 and 9 layer ropes. So, all of that being said, there's quite a little process involved in this, and I thought that you guys might find it interesting. So, I'm going to make a little cut here and get myself set up, and we can get tucked into the process, at least that I use, to reclaim the copper out of something like this. So here we are with this old service line. I've tried a few different stripping techniques off camera, and none of them were overly effective, but the one that I did find most effective was using a rubber mallet against an anvil. And I think the reason is that this coating is, I don't know if it's like a plastic or rubber or an amalgam of both, but after 30 years of being in the sun and exposed to UV, it is super brittle. So that's why this method is really, really effective. But, I mean, it flies everywhere. So this is containment 2.0. This thing works okay for keeping most of the chips inside of there. I would still suggest wearing a pair of safety glasses. With that completed, we now have, so there's a sheathing in there as well. It's just a plastic sheathing. That's junk as well. But we are left with 2-strand 20 or 22 gauge copper wire, a brown and a white. And this is what we're going to be working with. So I've got probably around 3 or 4 feet here, and I'm going to show you guys the techniques that I'm going to use to strip this off. So I don't have an industrial stripper. Most common way to do something like this would be with a pair of wire strippers. I mean, you would score it. And then pull that off. And you're left with, a piece of bare copper wire. I want to do the entire piece in one shot. And a pair of wire strippers like this just aren't going to cut it. So I'll show you what I have figured out for this. So in preparation for this video, I went through a bunch of different processes and trying to effectively, remove the wire coating from this 20 gauge wire. And I met a couple of different roadblocks. So one of the thoughts I had would have been using heat, just kind of melting it off, and the added benefit would be annealing the copper at the same time, or softening it for the processes that come after. But my main concern is that whatever is in the coating may soak into the copper and actually increase my amount of time due to having to clean out like a chemical or using another stripping process to get the copper to a really nice, something that is super clean. So, fire, even though it is my go-to for most solutions, it wasn't the go-to in this case. So that kind of put me to thinking about, okay, so industrial strippers, they basically draw the material through a set of dies or gears or whatever you want to call it, and magic, basically. Out the other side comes a stripped piece of copper wire. So I have, a bunch of salvage kicking around the studio here. So something along the lines of, let's say this is an old power supply unit. There's a very unique piece of aluminum in here. And aluminum is good with copper because they're roughly around the same softness. So it won't cut into the copper and the copper won't cut into the aluminum, which is great. So I salvaged a heatsink like this. So I salvaged some knife sections as well. And I probably have about a dozen of these. And these are very high quality steel. And so they were in the mix as well. I have a board to mount it to, and just a handful of screws and nails and stuff like that. And I ended up putting together basically a little stripping board. So this thing is, I know it's ugly. It is fug ugly, actually, but it is really quite effective at stripping this copper wire. I'll show you guys a bit of the process. So now that I have my board secured down to the bench here, you'll notice that this kind of pivots. I put a screw underneath just to guide it at the correct height to hit inside of this lattice. And this is super effective at stripping a large portion on the end of a piece of wire. Like that. You couldn't be easier. So this portion of the jig is essentially just two knife edges put together so that they come to a point. And I just popped a couple of screws through that, fastened it to the board, but loosely, so that it will allow a piece of wire to slip underneath between the two blades. Then I take my high-tech securing device, which is a bent nail. You may wonder what these nails are for. Simply just guides to make sure that the wire doesn't feed up or down the blade. Grab a pair of pliers. Takes a little finessing to get it started, but once it goes, my God, just gone. I can't imagine that the industrial strippers are much quicker or more efficient than that. that unit in action is, I mean, it's not too bad. The first time I put that smaller piece of white wire through, it was, super quick, and then I put the brown through, and you saw, I mean, I had a little bit of trouble getting it started, and then once it got going, I stripped an entire side off of the casing, and that makes it quite easy to just go in with an O-ring pick or something like that, and just pull the rest of the casing off. But, you may have noticed that it did hang up a couple of times. And the reason for that is, even though I did a lot of, just hand straightening, I'd take this thing and straighten it, but you still get these tiny kinks. And these kinks, when I'm running it through, these catch up, and sometimes it'll actually snap the wire off. Which, I'm not... If I'm looking to make long braided rope, I want to achieve the longest length possible. So that's not great. So I was thinking about it, and our old friend copper tubing came to mind. So I took a piece of copper tubing and I just cut it with a hacksaw, and I put it on a mandrel, which is a cone-shaped piece. Just one moment. This cone-shaped piece. So this is a punch, but it worked quite well to draw this copper pipe out and roll it back on itself to create an incredibly smooth edge. And so my plan was just to stick the wire through here and clamp this in a vise or clamp it to the table, and then kind of pull it through to get all of those kinks out. But I want to show you guys something unintended. So after creating my little Mario pipe looking thing here, I just clamped it to the edge of my table or bench here. Not tight enough to deform it too much, and I mean, simply I was just looking to straighten this as much as possible, but one of the unintended effects that ended up happening look at that, strips the wire at the same time. Isn't that crazy? Just strips the wire. Isn't that nuts? So we're gonna do a second take with the close-up in frame, but I mean it's a good second take. So we're gonna feed it through this way, so the camera picks it up. Just gonna grab with a pair of pliers this time. That's bonkers. That's going to save me so much time. Not even fit. This is where we sit currently after my discovery of the copper tube trick. It allowed me to get several meters of copper wire stripped. All of this is hardened a little bit by the process of drawing it through this tube, and that's okay. I mean, copper, again, is, if you've been following, copper is quite easy to anneal, and that's the plan for the majority of this. Now I can do that with a torch, and I can anneal all of this, but that's kind of inefficient for this. Now you notice this is a just a ceramic pizza plate, or pizza stone, sorry. And what I plan on doing in between videos here, because this one's coming to a close, I'm just going to stick this in the oven and flash it off and try to try to get this annealed in the oven, which it should be able to do, soft enough for us to be able to do the next portion, which is we'll be using the braiding block as well to create copper rope. All that's coming up. It's going to be pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited to show you guys just exactly how much you can do with literal trash. I mean, this is trash. It was trash. So yeah, if you guys made it this far, thank you very much. A like or a follow or a subscribe would definitely go the distance for me currently. You may have noticed a major increase in the quality of the videos. So I've gotten on to taking on commissions, as well as I pumped a whole bunch of my asset into creating a much better digital landscape to be able to show really super high detail, and I just wasn't happy with how things were going previously. So if you guys do enjoy this content, please a like or a follow or a subscribe or anything along those lines. Sharing the videos would go a heck of a long way. I don't plan on making this spiel very much, or like subscribe, comment, so on and so forth, but it really actually does help. I know that people you hear that people talking about that, but it actually does help. So yeah, anyhow, thank you very much. And in episode 2 we get to braiding, we get to all of the other fancy bits, but yeah, thank you very much. Take care. Bye.